7 Big Ten teams cracked the initial college football playoff top 25 rankings this week. 6 of them are in action. And this week, this is the point. This is the jumping off point to prove that they are good enough to make that run to the dance. Week 11 is here. It's time to preview and predict all Big Ten games. This is Big Nation.
From Pasadena to Piscataway, College Park to the Coliseum, Seattle to State College, Columbus to Camp Randall, the Zoo to the Rock, and everywhere in between. This is where Big Ten fans gather to talk America's premier national conference with your host, Big Ten Ted. All Big Ten, all year long. This is Big Nation.
Just because you're ranked in a good spot at the beginning of November at the first college football playoff rankings doesn't mean you're going to be ranked in a good spot to be in that 12-team tournament when it really matters. I remember, I looked back earlier this week at, hey, what did the first November rankings look like in previous years? And I'm like, oh, yeah, that team was in the top 25. They lost 3 of their last 4 games, or they lost half of their games down the stretch. Now is not the time to be looking ahead. This week, there is only one ranked versus ranked matchup. That is Oregon going on the road to Iowa. Boy, that is a fun matchup. I'm really looking forward to breaking that one down. But there are ranked teams at home going that are hosting an unranked team. There are ranked teams that are on the road traveling to an unranked team. And you need to be focused on the right here and right now instead of where you're ranked. Because if you're focused on where you're ranked and not who you're playing on Saturday, it can come to bite you in the butt. And you're not going to be playing for a championship when all was said and done. So focus is the name of the game for these head coaches and these coaching staffs right now. And there's some head coaches that are being talked about for maybe some other coaching openings. So there's a lot to juggle, certainly right now in the month of November. Let's talk Week 11, why don't we? 4 teams are on a bye, 14 teams are in action. Michigan, a team that really needed a bye considering how banged up they are right now. Their rival Michigan State, as well as Minnesota and Illinois, are on bye weeks this week. We do have a Friday night matchup this week, and that's where I want to begin. And this one's got some intrigue to it. The Northwestern Wildcats going on the road all the way out to the West Coast to take on the 19th-ranked USC Trojans, the Cardinal and Gold, 14.5-point favorites. The over-under in this one sits at 50.5 Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern on Fox. The Trojans are 5-0 all-time against the Purple Cats. The last time they met was the 1996 Rose Bowl after the 1995 season, of course, and that was the Big Ten championship season for Northwestern. Pat Fitzgerald was a middle linebacker on that squad. Keyshawn Johnson, 216 yards to propel the Trojans on that January 1st, 41-32 in a victory in the last showdown between these two teams. The battle of the private schools within the Big Ten. Now, here's the thing about Northwestern. They are coming off of a bye this week. So this isn't anything like a short week, traveling 2 time zones, or anything like that. So I'm sure Northwestern probably was able to get out there a little bit early considering the expanded amount of time that they had to practice and prepare for this specific matchup. So there's really no disadvantage maybe for the Wildcats in terms of that, in terms of the time plus the time zone change for this matchup. USC, of course, coming off a big, tough, gritty win against Nebraska last weekend with that number 19 ranking. Okay, when I talked about at the beginning of the show, when I talked about teams have got to be focused on the right here, right now, that's USC. They got a game against Iowa coming up. They got that game against Oregon. You know they are salivating over that one and going to Autzen Stadium once again. They have food left on the table. If they eat all that food, this is a team that can be playing in the college football playoff when all is said and done. But Northwestern, present some challenges, maybe present some roadblocks, maybe even for this USC team. If I'm looking at the Trojans in this one, I want to see them bounce back. A big-time rebound opportunity for the Trojans. If you look at last week's game against Nebraska, USC passing game did not look like the USC passing game. Jaden Mayava had his worst outing as a Trojans quarterback. Just 2 catches for Makai Lemon and 2 catches for Jacoby Lane. They did not get going much in the passing attack against a really good, mind you, Nebraska pass defense. And then they've been inconsistent this year against the run. Emmett Johnson had a really good day running the football on this Nebraska front seven, or on this USC front seven, I should say as well. So this is an opportunity for Jaden Mayava to get his confidence back. USC is a team that just plays better at home. They play better at the Coliseum. Okay, up until last week, this was a team that did not play very well on the road. And like I just laid out, there were some parts of their game that also, once again, didn't play well on the road. You look at the Big Ten era, you get USC in the sunshine and the beaches, and you get them in the shadows of the Olympic rings. They're usually going to play a pretty good football game. And I think that's what I'm expecting from USC. To get that confidence up for Jade Mayava, get the ball into Makai Lemon's hands early. I don't care how you do it. I don't care if it's a tunnel screen. I don't care if it's just pitching it out to him on a reverse. I don't care if it's in the middle of the field. I don't care if it's deep. Get the ball into the hands of your best player. Plain and simple. This is not difficult. Now, here's what I will say about the matchup of USC's passing offense against Northwestern. Northwestern has done pretty well against the pass this year. They're 5th in the Big Ten in pass defense, allowing just 165 yards per game. But their PFF coverage grade doesn't really translate to that. They're 72nd in the country in that coverage grade. So what exactly should we expect? What is the Northwestern secondary right now? I don't think they have stud talents at corner. I mean, they had an all Big Ten guy in Theron Johnson last year. He ended up transferring to Oregon. They don't really have a guy like that, I'd say, on the outside. They have a bunch of solid to good to really good football players that don't allow anything over the top. They keep things in front of them, and they do a pretty good job tackling. That's, I think, and that's what Northwestern is going to put on the play. That's what David Braun and this defensive coaching staff is going to hope to do. All right, let's not allow the big plays down the field. Let's not allow the explosives from USC. Let's tackle well. Let's get off the field on 3rd down. I think that's exactly what Northwestern wants to be able to do in this game. No singular quarterback has thrown for over 200 yards in a game this season against the Wildcats. They are top 20 in the country in the least amount of 10-plus, 20-plus, and 30-plus yard plays this season. Whereas USC, when USC is on, they are creating those explosive plays. They're top 20 in the country in the most amount of 10-plus and 20-plus yard plays gained from scrimmage this year. So that's a big collision point, I think, for me. Is Northwestern going to be able to contain USC in some of those explosive plays? Or is USC going to have a bounce-back performance? Are they going to be able to overcome that and play really well? My gut tells me that USC is going to be able to create those plays. I just don't know how many of those plays that they're going to be able to create down the field as well. Now, the other thing that I mentioned at the top, USC's run defense has been inconsistent this season. Northwestern is a team that runs the ball pretty well. This is a physical team. They don't throw the ball particularly well with Preston Stone. So they got to get their run game going to be able to have success. They're 5th in the Big Ten in rushing, 187 yards per game. And they're coming off a performance, rushed for 172 against Nebraska. Hey, King Miller and USC had a pretty similar performance against that Nebraska front, didn't they? Caleb Komalafa, he's a power back, 17 carries, 125, and 2 scores against Nebraska. So if I'm USC, I know maybe the secondary was a little bit maligned earlier in the season. I think they've gotten a little bit better. I'm trusting my corners on the outside. I'm like, Northwestern, if you're going to beat me, Preston Stone and his inconsistency and maybe some of his poor decision-making, that's what's going to have to beat me. I'm not going to let you beat me on the ground. We're going to bring extra bodies into the box, and we are going to make sure that we contain that Northwestern run game. And then, if you're the Wildcats, it's the flip side. Pound the rock. Be physical. Make them beat you at the line of scrimmage for the second consecutive week. And you might not even be able to say that because Nebraska was able to run the football pretty well. So is USC going to be able to hang up with the toughness of Northwestern? I think that's going to be a big question. USC is a much more talented roster. I don't think that's really much of an argument. So I think the battle for Northwestern is how long they can kind of keep this game in a phone booth a little bit, where we know USC, they want to get onto the perimeter. They want to utilize their skill, their speed, and athleticism, certainly. All right, folks, it is prediction time. It would not surprise me if this game is kind of closer. Maybe it's 13-6. At halftime. Maybe it's 14-6 at halftime. Maybe Northwestern is really milking the clock and USC, isn't getting out there for a ton of drives. But here's the thing. I think it's going to be difficult for Northwestern to be able to sustain that over a 60-minute game and to be able to really hang around with the playmakers that USC has. Give me the Trojans 31. Give me Northwestern 13. So that is a USC cover. And if my math serves me right, that is an under in this game, because I think Northwestern's defense is going to be able to contain, maybe not stop, but they're going to be able to contain maybe some of the sheer amount of explosive plays that USC wants to get, but Northwestern doesn't have the offense to be able to put enough points up on the board to maybe have this one going over. All right, let's move on to Saturday. Why don't we? The second-ranked Indiana Hoosiers, 15.5-point favorites, going on the road out to Happy Valley to take on the Nittany Lions of Penn State. Over-under 45.5 points. This is Saturday. I wish I could spell on the graphic, not Saturday, but you get the general idea. 12 p.m. Eastern. This is the big noon game on Fox. Big noon kickoff pregame show is at Oregon and Iowa. Gus, Joel, and Jenny will be at this matchup. Penn State, 25-2 all time against the Hoosiers. Of course, one of those came in the COVID year for the Michael Penix stretch at the goal line. The other one came in 2013. Prior to that one in 2013, Penn State won 16 in a row. The first 16 matchups between these two teams. Now, things are a little bit different, aren't they, surrounding these two teams. Indiana is the team that looks like a juggernaut. Penn State is the team that is still looking for their first Big Ten win of the season. Now, Penn State is still a talented team. I think that's the thing. People look at that 0 in the Big Ten wins column and they look how much they're struggling. There's still talent across the board. And I think they're just trying to figure out what they're going to be the rest of the season. And this has not been an easy stretch since Franklin's gotten fired. I mean, Iowa playing good football, and they only lost by a point on the road in Iowa City. Ohio State and Indiana, the top two teams in the country. So you kind of feel for the Nittany Lions right after the firing that they get this brutal 3-game stretch within the Big Ten, but that's how the schedule draw was this season. I think the big question because I think when you look at this game from 10,000 feet, you're like, oh my God, Indiana's got a Heisman candidate quarterback. They've got a defense that is absolutely humming. Brian Haynes has that unit they're playing balls to the wall right now. I mean, they're so aggressive and they're so good each and every single week. They can run the ball, they can throw the ball, they can do so many different things. But I think when you look at this game a little bit closer to earth, one might say, I think the big question is, how long can Penn State keep this game in a bottle? Because they need to keep it in a bottle as long as they possibly can. Because as we know, when that cap is twisted off, Indiana can blow this thing open, and this cannot be a ball game for very much longer. So last week, let's look at Penn State's matchup against the Buckeyes of Ohio State. This was a 17-14 game at the break. They were able to keep that game in a bottle and have a chance and have a little bit of confidence going into the locker room. I talked about this on the reaction. The score at halftime, I don't think was indicative in the way the game really played out. You know, that late turnover that led to a touchdown was the difference of being 17-14 as opposed to maybe being 24-7. That was a huge 10 to 14 point swing in favor of the Nittany Lions at the end. And Penn State had one really good drive that went for a touchdown, 75 yards, I think it was. It took 7 minutes off the clock. So Ohio State did not have maybe as much time as that first half to really get a lot of those big time possessions and go in. They scored, I think, on their first three of their first four, or maybe it was their first three possessions. I can't exactly remember. But Ohio State was doing pretty well offensively outside of that fumble. So Penn State needs to find a way to kind of keep this game bottled up as long as they can. I think the best way to do that, they need to be able to run the ball. They need to not only be able to run the ball well in the first half, they need to be able to run the ball well in the second half. Keep Indiana's offense off the field. The best way to prevent Indiana from scoring 55 points is not having the unit that puts the points on the field. I mean, that's fairly obvious right now. So you got to get Kaytron Allen going. You got to get this offensive line that is starting to get healthy. You got to get them going a little bit. Kaytron Allen, 145 yards against Iowa. Iowa, a pretty good run defense. Is that something that they can translate against this Indiana team? I'm not sure. On and off success running the ball against Ohio State. But here's the thing about Indiana. Indiana stresses you out because they're very aggressive. Very aggressive. When it comes to sacks, when it comes to tackles for loss, they're right up there in not only the Big Ten, but they're right up there nationally as far as guys that can win one-on-one battles, guys that can kill a double team, guys that can get into the backfield and create negative plays. And if Indiana is able to create negative plays against Penn State consistently in the first half, it's game over. It's game over because once a more limited offense with Ethan Grunkemeyer at quarterback, once they get behind the line of scrimmage a little bit, it's tough, man. It's tough, man, because I think now then you look to the secondary. Even if we think Ethan is progressing as a quarterback, this was an Elite 11 quarterback after all, they still kind of have the same problems at wide receiver that they did a year ago, right? These are guys that just aren't quite good enough to be able to separate and be a legitimate threat down the field. And Indiana, they are great back in coverage. The Hoosiers have the 5th highest PFF coverage grade this season. That's the highest in the Big Ten. That was higher than Ohio State, who they played. So I don't think the passing game is really going to be much of an option for the Nittany Lions in this game. So they got to hope to run the football really efficiently, and they got to hope that their defense plays a great game against Indiana. But the thing about Indiana is they can beat you in so many different ways. If you come out and you contain the run game, Fernando Mendoza can pitch the ball around to a lot of different guys. He's a really smart and cerebral quarterback. For Indiana in this one, you just got to go out there and you got to do what you do. There's nothing really extra that you have to accomplish because when Indiana is just kind of playing their game, executing the script, executing the game plan, they're as good as any team out there in college football. The only team that's really been able to get them kind of a little bit off script this season has been Iowa. Oregon wasn't able to do it in their game. Indiana had a fair amount of success going down the field in that game at Autzen Stadium earlier this year. I'm really curious about the status of Aiden Fisher at linebacker, Elijah Surratt at wide receiver. They're kind of both dealing with injuries. Aiden Fisher was not able to go last week, and then I believe Surratt got hurt in last week's game against Maryland. So, I feel confident whether those guys are on the field or not for the Hoosiers. Penn State need to play a 60-minute game against the run. Indiana's offense starts with the RPO. It starts with that run game, and boy, they're really getting into a groove with Kalen Black and Roman Hemby right now, and a little bit of sprinkle of Kobe Martin as well in the backfield. Penn State, I thought, did a good job against the run until that 51-yard run by Bo Jackson in the third quarter. So, but Indiana has been a better team at running the football than Ohio State has been. So it's a little bit, I think, of a different challenge. If you're able to stop the run, maybe you're able to cover better than you did last week. You're kind of grasping at things. Indiana's just a wagon right now. Indiana is they're just a machine. And I don't really see a lot of this changing right now. Penn State's offensive line has only allowed 11 sacks this season. That's about middle of the road in the Big Ten. You need to keep Ethan Grunkemeyer upright and maybe get rid of the football quickly, knowing that you have a unit that can really get after the quarterback, quick passes, because just like I said, Penn State is not going to be able to separate downfield against these IU corners. Lewis Moore has been doing great at safety. Of course, D'Angelo Pons out there at corner. So the long developing stuff I don't think is going to work. Getting rid of the football quickly, running the ball, that's, I think, the hope that Penn State needs to execute to possibly pull this mammoth upset. All right, folks, it is prediction time. Indiana wins, but I think Penn State plays a respectable defensive football game. Give me the Hoosiers 34 and the Nittany Lions 10. It's really hard to go over 10 points for the way that Penn State's offense is maybe playing with the inexperienced quarterback going up against this Indiana defense. But we'll see. We'll see if this Happy Valley crowd can maybe give them a little bit of a boost and maybe make things a little bit more difficult. Indiana came out with an interception, scored on scored a touchdown on one of their first 4 drives, I believe it was. So maybe Penn State can have similar defensive success, and maybe they can sit on the ball and milk the clock a little bit. But I don't know if that's going to happen consistently for 60 minutes. Indiana's a pretty damn good team defensively. So give me the Hoosiers by 24. That's a Hoosier cover. And at 44, that is another under. Indiana under. Maybe I'm living on the edge a little bit there. All right, let's go to 2 more games. We've got number 1, Ohio State, going on the road to face Purdue. It is the 60th all-time meeting between these two teams. Ohio State has won 5 of the last 6 matchup, of course. That famous, if you're an Ohio State fan, infamous 2018 game where Purdue they lit it up. They lit it up and pulled one of the biggest upsets in recent memory. That victory is the lone victory for Purdue against Ohio State since 2012. Okay. If Ohio State wanted to, they could put up 60 points on Purdue. They've been going like 60% throttle, 70% throttle. I think Ryan Day is playing the long game. It really appears to me he's trying to keep his team fresh for when it really matters at the end of the year. He knows that he's got a supremely talented team, and I think he's like, okay, let's just get incrementally better. Let's get Julian Sayin incrementally better each and every single week. And now Julian Sayin is really hitting his stride as a quarterback in this Ohio State offense at this moment in time. The stats back it up. The film backs it up. Purdue gives up the second most passing yards in the Big Ten. They've given up the second most 30-plus, 40-plus yard passing plays in the country this season. Ohio State, 257-yarders last week, the 45-yarder to Carnell Tate. I got a hard time believing that Purdue is going to limit this passing attack in any way. This is an opportunity, I think, for Ohio State to really focus on something that maybe isn't completely out of this world, like they're playing like aliens out there, like the passing game is. Focus on the run game a little bit. Let's get this run game, get them a little bit better with C.J. Donaldson, especially Bo Jackson, that true freshman. The run game maybe has not been as good. And I think that was the expectation. We knew the passing game was going to be really good. We knew maybe the run game wasn't going to be as good as last year. Now's a good time, especially if you're kind of up by 3 scores, you're up by 4 scores. Okay, let's work on some different rushing concepts that can maybe help us a little bit later on during the season. Purdue is down Devin Mockabee. He is out for the rest of the season, and his Purdue career has now come to an end. Man, I remember covering this kid when he was a freshman. I think that was my first year covering games here at Big Ten Ted back in 2021, and man, he was crazy legs. He was cutting over here and cutting over there, weaving all across defenses. He was a walk-on to start, got the scholarship from Ryan Walters. He's been a little bit banged up the last couple of seasons. I just want to say salute to the mock train right now. Devin Maccabee has been so fun to watch. Malachi Thomas, you got to step in and get this run game going a little bit. Now, if Purdue's going to try to take shortcuts in this game, they got to force turnovers, right? They got to gain extra possessions, got to take possessions away from Ohio State. Purdue only 3 interceptions this year. That's the second least in the Big Ten. So their secondary, as I mentioned, has not been very good this year. They've forced 6 fumbles, right? We saw C.J. Donaldson fumble. Maybe you can get that punch going a little bit, and maybe that helps you out at this point in time. But yeah, Ohio State, I think, is just obviously a supremely talented team. We'll see how fast of a start they get on the road here in West Lafayette. How about Maryland going on the road to Rutgers? Scarlet Knights, a 1.5 favorite. So, and the over-under is sitting at 58.5. I think Vegas is expecting close, lots of points. Saturday, 2:30 p.m. Eastern on FS1. It's the 21st all-time meeting between these two teams. Maryland leads the series 12-8 last season. Rutgers broke a 3-game losing streak to the Terps. Okay, so I'm going to say this as kindly as I possibly can. Rutgers continues to struggle on defense. Rutgers continues to be bad. They continue to be really bad on defense. They gave up 445 total yards to Illinois last week. There's no signs that show me that this thing is going to be able to turn around. There's nothing that shows me that this thing is going to improve anytime soon in Piscataway, New Jersey. Now, when you have a true freshman quarterback like Malik Washington at Maryland, you're going to have some hills and you're going to have some valleys. I know Maryland is kind of flat out there, but you get the point of what I'm trying to say. But I think that this could be more of a hill. I think you could maybe going up the roller coaster a little bit for Malik. They've got a deep group of pass catchers, the Jaleel Farouks of the world, the Shalik Knotts of the world. I think that this is a Maryland passing attack with enough diversity of weapons on the outside where they can create some things in the pass game. And I think they can move. I think they're going to have success moving the ball and also scoring the ball on the Scarlet Knights defense. And then if you take a look at the other side of the ball, Maryland can play some defense. Okay, this is maybe a little bit of an underrated group. Maybe the numbers aren't in their favor, but maybe last week's gaudy production from Indiana skews a lot of defensive numbers. Let me put it that way. Like, they allowed 55, of course, to the Hoosiers. Were there, 2 defensive touchdowns, I believe, in there? I mean, before that, the highest point total they allow was 34 to Nebraska. This is a team that held Washington. I think we view Washington as a pretty explosive offense. They held the Huskies to 20, and they held UCLA to 20 when the Bruins were playing with a lot of momentum and playing pretty well on the offensive side of the football. Maryland, this is an attacking defense. 15 interceptions this year, second in the country. Jamari Glasker, Jalen Husky, 3 picks each. Lakai Rowland, Dante Joyner, 2 picks each. 9 different Terps have picks this season. Now, Athan has done a pretty good job taking care of the ball. Just 5 interceptions this year, and 2 of them came against Oregon. So you have 3 other combined interceptions in their 7 games or whatever it is, the remainder of the season. But he has been prone to not making the best decisions under pressure. And I think this is what makes this Maryland defense, I think, playing where it's at right now. Yes, they have some talent back there in the secondary, but they get after it. Maryland, 23 sacks. That's 5th in the Big Ten. Sidney Stewart, Zahir Mathis, they've combined for 50 pressures, 10.5 sacks this year. I don't have a ton of faith in this in the pass protection. From a run blocking standpoint, Rutgers, according to PFF, is one of the best run blocking offensive lines in the country. Maybe that's something that they need to do a little bit more and lean into that. And maybe it starts in this game as well. But yeah, Maryland can get after it, and I got confidence that their pass rush, their secondary, you combine them together, that they could have a good performance against this Rutgers team. Rutgers may want to think to run the football. Because I talked about the pass rush, I talked about the secondary. The best way to slow down an aggressive pass rush is a run game. Antoine Raymond has shown some flashes this season. Overall, the Knights haven't been great on the ground, but maybe to slow the game down a little bit and maybe make things easier for your passing attack, really investing in the run game, I think could be a pretty good strategy. We know Maryland's not going to run the ball. They're last in the Big Ten on the ground, so they're going to look to get their yardage through the air. I think you're going to see some points. Let's get to some predictions for these two games. Give me Ohio State 38-3 over Purdue. I think this Ohio State could come out on fire right away, and they're probably going to shut it down mid-late third quarter or something like that. I think Maryland can score. I believe in Maryland's defense more than I do Rutgers, but I still think Rutgers can produce some offense. The Scarlet Knights have shown some flashes of good offense, but it's been, especially in Big Ten play, but they haven't really been able to sustain it a lot for a 60-minute game. Good drive, but it kind of fades off a little bit. I'll take Maryland 35-20. Yes, this was a 1.5-point spread favoring the Scarlet Knights. I'm going a 15.2 possession victory for the Terps on Saturday. So I'm going in a big-time other direction. Okay, folks. Styles make fights. And this game is going to be an absolute war. The 9th-ranked Oregon Ducks, 6.5-point favorites, going on the road. Kinnick Stadium, tough place to play to face the 20th-ranked Iowa Hawkeyes. They are playing some pretty good football right now. The over-under still pretty low, sitting at 40.5 Saturday, 3:30 p.m. Eastern on CBS. It is the 4th ever meeting between these two. The last time they met, 1994 at Autzen Stadium when the Ducks won 40-18 over the Hawkeyes. That was the season with Kenny Wheaton's pick against Washington. That was Rich Brooks' last season in Eugene, Oregon. That was the first time that they went to the Rose Bowl in 1994 since 1957 in over 30 years. So that was a pretty historic season for Oregon. But now, fast forward to this year. Both teams are coming off of a bye week. Oregon in the monsoon that was Eugene winning 21-7 over Wisconsin. Iowa, whoo, baby, did they win and win big. They were impressive, scoring on offense, scoring on defense, scoring on special teams against the Minnesota Golden Gophers, winning 41-3. The first thing that I want to say about this, the forecast could be a factor. High of 46 degrees, 50% chance of rain. Now, when Oregon had the rain against Wisconsin, the rain took away a big advantage that the Ducks had. And that's the downfield weapons. And that's the downfield passing game. Okay? Like, that was maybe the area that Oregon could have really attacked Wisconsin. Wisconsin's strength on defense was their rush defense. And that's maybe why the game was a little bit closer early on in this thing. And that plays into Iowa's favor. If I'm Iowa, I'm praying to Mother Nature. Let it rain, baby. Let it rain is what I'm kind of hoping for right now for the Hawkeyes, because I think that limits the explosiveness that you could see from Dante Moore and this Oregon offense. Iowa's defense is just an Iowa defense, and that's maybe the biggest compliment that you could give them right now. They are fundamentally sound. They're getting better in the secondary. They play really well up front on the defensive line. Like, Iowa is the only team to really contain Indiana this season, and Oregon is on that list as well. Like, Iowa held Indiana just 13 points until late in the fourth quarter. IU had just over 100 yards rushing in that particular matchup. So Phil Parker has got this defense flying all over the football field right now. This is going to be an absolute war in the trenches. I mean, that's where most Iowa football games are decided. Oregon's got some really good trenches as well. Iowa is the second best run blocking offensive line in the country, graded according to PFF. We know Amari Washington is a 336-pound stud in the middle there at defensive tackle. Bear Alexander has really formulated into that role next to him as a really good player. They've got a great defensive tackle, nose tackle combination as well. Can Iowa consistently move Oregon's defensive line off the ball, and can they get Kamari Moulton going consistently? Because here's the thing. If I'm Tosh Lupoi and if I'm the Oregon Ducks, I feel really confident in Brandon Finney, the great true freshman on one side, Ife Obadegwu, the redshirt freshman on the other side, that I have much more talent out at corner than Iowa does at wide receiver. Iowa is playing some good football this year, but they still don't really have great players on the outside. All right? You know, you're looking at Sam Phillips, the transfer. You know, you're still looking at Jacob Gill. And Caden Weegan is really their weapon. But we'll talk maybe more about Caden Weegan a little bit later. Okay, so if Iowa can consistently get the interior run game going, that sets them up for big plays. Oregon's edges, Tatum Tuioti and Mateo Uyunglele, need to be honest in this game. Because if Iowa runs middle, ISO, duo, all of these interior rushing concepts, then you know what happens? RPO game. Everybody's used to it's going inside. It's going inside. It's going inside. And then whoop, Mark Gronowski pulls the ball, goes around the end for 30 or 40 yards for a touchdown. That's the big play that the Iowa Hawkeyes can generate. If Tuioti and Uyunglele get their eyes stuck in the backfield, there's going to be problems. They need to play honest football off the edge to be able to contain this QB run game from Mark Gronowski. And if I'm Tim Lester, I'm trying to scheme up exactly what I can do in this quarterback run game to see how many explosive run plays that I can get from Mark Gronowski in this specific matchup. I talked about how much that if I'm Tosh Lupoi, the defensive coordinator for Oregon, I talked about how much that I should trust the corners. Boy, if I'm the Ducks, you know, they run this 4-2-5 scheme. They've got what they call the star position. Dalen Austin has been there. Jaden Kennedy, who's played really good football, has been in there as well. But you know what I'm doing? And we've seen this look from them. I'm taking a star off the field. I'm bringing in an extra safety, like Dylan Thieneman has kind of played that high linebacker, low safety in a Tampa 2 type of look. And, to be honest with you, guys like Aaron Flowers and Dylan Thieneman, they fit the run. They played the run better than Oregon's linebackers probably, whether it's Jerry Mixon, Bryce Betcher, or Devin Jackson. Those guys haven't been outstanding, let's just put it that way, this season defending against the run. There's too many times when those guys get driven 6 yards down the field or 7 yards down the field. So if I'm Iowa, I think the biggest challenge for me for the run game is going to be the defensive line. If I can get, you look in a duo concept, you get the double team and then one guy gets to the next level against the linebacker. If I can get past the defensive line consistently, I feel very confident in my ability to run for 125, to run for 150, to run for 175, and etc. But kind of getting back to my point, trust your corners on an island. Bring in as much good run defenders as possible, whether that extra safety, bring them up to the line of scrimmage, and crowd the box. Make them beat you in a traditional passing game. That's what you got to do right now if you're the Oregon Ducks at this point in time. Okay, let's look at it from an Oregon offensive perspective. Okay, so this is a very disciplined Iowa football team. This is a Hawkeye secondary that's, as I said before, they're playing a lot better. I know like the popular method might be, all right, let Dante sling it. Make Iowa play in a little bit of a track meet type of game. And yeah, there's certainly some validity, to that. But if I'm Oregon, I know Yapani Lalaulu, the center. I know Emmanuel Pregna. That's a really good run blocking combination. I'm like, all right, Iowa, you want to play in the mud? You want to play this game? We can play this game too. If I'm Oregon, I'm like, let's give them a taste of their own medicine. If I'm Oregon, let's run the football on the early downs and let's set up let's open up the playbook on a 2nd and short. Let's open up the playbook on a 3rd and short right now. So Jordan Davison, back-to-back 100-yard rushing games. I think there could be, I think Oregon is maybe starting to get into a little bit of a rhythm and some confidence running the football up the middle and being more physical up front. And I think Iowa's going to be very focused on keeping everything in the pass game in front of them. Let Agent Zero, let Jordan Davison go to work and then work off of that play action. That's when you get your one-on-one matchups. Okay, when you run the ball really effectively and then hit your big plays over the top. This is going to be a really fun game. Big time contrast of styles. Let's get into my prediction. I think that this is going to be a lower scoring game. I think it's going to be a defensive game. I think it's going to be a physical game. I just think Oregon has too much talent. Oregon has proven last year against Wisconsin, maybe even this past year against Wisconsin, they have examples where they can play in the mud and they can play that type of football game. Iowa's going to make it physical. Caden Weegan and special teams, that's going to be another big factor. If Iowa can create big plays without having their offense go out on the field, that gives them the extra boost. That gives them the extra momentum, and Oregon obviously needs to be able to keep that in check. But I think Oregon just has too much talent right now. Give me the Ducks 23 and the Hawkeyes 17. I could see like this one being 17-16 late. Oregon gets a late big play and explosive touchdown, and it's enough for them to hang on and get out of Iowa City with a win. So at a 6-point win, that's Iowa plus 6.5. I feel pretty good actually about an Iowa cover in this game. And let's see if I can do some quick math. I think it's just under. It's 23-17. Is that 40? I don't know. Minnesota math not helping me out right now, but it's hanging right around that over-under total at this point in time. All right, let's finish with a couple more games on the schedule. Number 23, Washington, 11.5-point favorites going on the road to face Wisconsin. Over-under sits at 45.5. It's Saturday, 3:30 p.m. Eastern on the Big Ten Network. 5th all-time meeting. Washington has won the previous 4. Both teams are coming off of a bye. Look, here's the deal for Wisconsin, man. They are just, they're too banged up. They are too banged up right now. Jake Renfro, their center, out for the year. Dylan Jones, the running back, out for the year. Rotational safety Matthew Traynor is out for the season. Christian Allegro, their top linebacker, maybe defensive player, did not play last week. Darian Dupree in the backfield. Preston Zachman. Billy Edwards, of course, still out. Like, there is just too much on the shelf for Wisconsin for them to really be effective. I would be aware, if I'm Wisconsin, I think they really need to consider going with Carter Smith. He is a true freshman quarterback, 4-star. He can still keep his red shirt, right? He can still redshirt this season. They've kind of gotten past that 4-game threshold. He is a mobile quarterback. You look at his film, he's pretty quick. So he could add a little bit of a different dimension. Did they use the bye week to be able to get Carter ready? Just something to keep an eye on, and something I would really consider, because Hunter Simmons ain't it, man. He is not a Big Ten quarterback. Let me just put it that way. Wisconsin needs to play Wisconsin football. They need to have success in the run game, okay, with the musical chairs in the O-line and the quarterback situation. Don't think they're going to be able to generate a lot through the air. Gideon Ituka, 21 carries, 85 yards against Oregon. They had some success being able to run the football. Illinois running backs rushed 21 carries, 89 yards against Washington. Washington statistically, pretty good against the run, but I don't know how many offenses they've played this year that have really invested in the run game. So there's certainly some things to be taken into consideration as there. If you're Washington, just let her rip. Let her rip, baby. I mean, this is a Wisconsin secondary. I thought they actually did a pretty decent job keeping Oregon's wide receivers early in the game before the weather came, kind of at bay. But I have a hard time believing that Wisconsin's going to be able to contain this Washington offense for 60 minutes. If I'm Washington, get Damon Williams outside the pocket. You saw what happened against Michigan. When you kind of keep him to the inside, you got Mason Reiger and Darrell Peterson. They're solid players coming off the edge, specifically Reiger. So if they can kind of keep him contained, if you've got good coverage down the field, maybe that's a formula for Wisconsin to disrupt Washington a little bit. But, yeah, like I said, if I'm the Huskies, move around Damon Williams, get him where he really makes plays outside of the pocket. I want quick throws, get the ball in space, speed, athleticism, Desmond Roebuck, Denzel Boston. We all know the cast of characters. Wisconsin's run defense is pretty good. I'm not sure how much they're going to pound Jonah Coleman in this game, but we'll see. Lots of speed, lots of skill, lots of athleticism. We'll see how much Wisconsin can muck this game up a little bit. And this is a game that I just have no idea about. The Nebraska Cornhuskers going on the road to UCLA. The Bruins, 2.5-point favorites in Pasadena. The over-under is 43.5 Saturday, 8 p.m. Eastern on Fox. It is the 15th all-time meeting between these two teams. It's an even 7-7. Either way, of course, UCLA got the 27-20 victory in Lincoln last year. And like I said, I have no idea what's going to happen here. There is so much unpredictability. Do not, I repeat, do not bet on this game. It puts the gamble in gambling, no doubt about that. I mean, UCLA coming off of a bye week where the following week they lost 56-6 to Indiana and they had a big roadblock to that Cinderella story. Nebraska was is now on the road after a loss to USC, and Dylan Raiola, their starting quarterback, went down. Okay, what do we know about this matchup? Okay, Nebraska has had continued issues against the run. USC ran the football well. Northwestern ran the football well. Minnesota ran the football really well against the Huskers. Emmett Johnson, he's starting to get into a groove running the football. And it may be more Dana Holgerson is getting into a groove calling the run offense. And, yeah, you're probably going to see a lot more of that considering the quarterback situation. What else do we know? I think UCLA has the more trustworthy quarterback right now. Nebraska, one of the best passing defenses in the country. Their performance against Jaden Mayava and that USC team is, I think, Exhibit A. What are the unknowns? TJ Lateef, the true freshman quarterback. We saw him last week. He's got some wheels. He's got some speed. What have they done in this week leading up to this thing to get him ready to utilize Dane Key, to utilize Naziah Hunter down the field? That's my second unknown. Are those guys formidable weapons? Or does the lack of experience and maybe the lack of trust in Lateef throwing the ball down the field kind of take these guys away as things that UCLA really needs to worry about significantly in this game? Does Lateef's mobility affect the pass protection concerns? UCLA's lack of pressure, though, they generate the least amount of pressure in the Big Ten this season. That might ease the concerns a little bit more. Will UCLA dedicate itself to running the football? Anthony Jones is back from injury. They're the 61st ranked rushing offense in all of college football. They ran the ball when they needed to. 193 yards against Maryland when Nico was turning the football over and not having his best game. This game feels like it boils down to the run game. Whoever runs the football better is going to have success, and I think both teams have openings in the run game to be able to be good. UCLA gives up the most rushing yards in the Big Ten. Nebraska gives up the third most rushing yards in the Big Ten. This is unpredictability, folks, at its finest. Let's finish things off with some predictions. I think, maybe Wisconsin could hang around a little bit, make it a little bit of a defensive game, but I just think there's too much talent for Washington. Give me the Huskies 30, Badgers 6. I'm going to go Nebraska. I think Nebraska can run the ball better. I like Emmett Johnson and this Husker run game more than I do UCLA's right now. I think they're going to be able to utilize TJ Latif's mobility. And now that he's going to go with the ones this entire week, I think there's going to be a little bit more trust. But I think Nico and UCLA, they're going to be able to move the football. This game feels like it boils down to like a late turnover. That's just the gut feeling that I get. Give me Nebraska 21 and UCLA 20 with the Huskers getting the win. I'm really looking forward to this weekend of Big Ten college football. Now, I'll be out of town this weekend, so I'll try to kind of consume as much as I can on the way back on Sunday, and maybe we'll have a reaction show or some type of content maybe on Monday or earlier in the week. But at the very least, we'll see you for the Week 12 preview next week. All right. Until then, I'm Big Ten Ted. We'll see you in the next one.